What's up everyone? So in this video, we're going to talk about the most anabolic exercise that you can do. Now, before anyone gets pissy in the comments, I know exercise is technically catabolic. It is breaking tissue down, and then later when you eat food, you are anabolic, so you're building back up. I know, calm down. However, it is certainly true that not every exercise is the same in terms of muscle building potential. So in this video, I'm going to explain why I think the high bar back squat is the most anabolic exercise that you can do. Keep in mind, this is just my opinion. You might have a different one. I'm also going to explain some other exercises that might be good options for you, simply because you are not me. This is just my opinion, and you might find that a different exercise is going to be your most anabolic movement. So first of all, let's go through the requirements. What does it take to be a candidate for the most anabolic exercise ever? Why isn't a bench press not a good choice? Well, first of all, a bench press is only working a small fraction of your body. It's working primarily the triceps, the chest, the shoulders. Yes, you can use leg drive, but it's certainly not going to stimulate the legs to any appreciable degree. Same thing with the overhead press. You are technically using your core, your glutes and your quads are under tension if you're keeping them tight, if you're using good form, but it is certainly not a stimulus for growth. So most upper body movements are simply thrown out the window, simply because they are not generating a stimulus in a large portion of the body. This is particularly true of the glutes and the quads. These two are by far the biggest muscles in the body. It's not even close. The quads and glutes are both absolutely ginormous. So if an exercise doesn't use those, it's not going to be particularly anabolic, simply because it's not using very much muscle. So something has to use the glutes and it has to use the quads to be a candidate. Furthermore, you need to be able to do it for reps. Doing singles, doing doubles, doing triples is not particularly stimulatory. You need to be able to do it for at least moderate reps and preferably 10 to 12 reps or even more. It also needs to generate hunger. So this is going to be very personal, but this is a good way to tell which exercise is anabolic for you. For me, after squatting, I am absolutely ravenous. If I do it with sufficient volume, sufficient intensity, squatting near failure for multiple sets, I will be absolutely ravenous for the next 36, 48, even 60 hours, simply because my muscles are growing and they need food. They're like little baby chicks. They need food to grow. It also needs to have a big effect on your hormones. So these kind of full body movements, Olympic lifting, deadlifting, squatting, they are absolutely going to stimulate growth hormones, stimulate testosterone. This isn't as big a deal as people think, but it can certainly help. It's certainly not a bad thing to get a spike of growth hormone or testosterone. Also, another very important factor is that you need to be able to recover from it. If you can only do an exercise once every 2 weeks because it just beats you up so much, guess what? That's not a very good exercise. It might be good that one time, but because you can't do it often enough, in terms of your actual long-term progress, not gonna do that much. It just won't. So you need to pick an exercise that you can preferably do at least twice per week, and 3 times would be even better. So it needs to be a big movement that you can still recover from. Finally, you need to have a stretch on the muscle. So there needs to be an eccentric and a concentric. If there's no eccentric, if there's no stretch on the muscles, there's no bounce on the muscles, especially the quads and the glutes, it simply won't be as stimulatory. And this is part of the reason why deadlifting is often not quite as good as the squat for building whole body mass. Simply because when you're deadlifting, you deadlift it up, and then there's not really much tension on the way down. And for me, the high bar back squat is going to be something that ticks all of these boxes. There really is not very much that ticks all of these boxes. It's a lot of boxes, and it's hard to tick all of them. So bench press, overhead press, pull-ups, rows, those are all good movements that you should absolutely be doing, but they're not going to be the most anabolic. Other candidates would be as follows. First, the deadlift. So there's not going to be a stretch again. There's not going to be an eccentric, It's not going to use the quads very much, but it's going to use a little bit more hamstrings. It's going to use the grip. It's going to stimulate the back a whole lot more than squats. So for some people, I'll admit that the deadlift might be a more stimulatory exercise, simply because for a lot of people, it's going to be using more muscle mass. However, the problem with the deadlift is usually recovery. It can be hard on the quote-unquote central nervous system. It can be tough on the lower back. And simply put, it takes longer to recover from. If you have a hard squat workout, most people can come back 3 or 4 days later and they'll be stronger. If you do that with a deadlift, you'll probably be weaker. I mean, if you deadlift hard and come back the next day and try to do the same weight, the bar will be pinned to the ground. Like you did it for 10 reps yesterday and you come back and you're like, oh, I want to deadlift again. That's stupid, but I've done this. And you try to deadlift what you used to do for 10 reps one day ago, and you can't even move it. It's just like stuck to the ground because you're so messed up. So the deadlift, it does have a very, very big recovery issue that for a lot of people is going to cause it not to be ideal as the most anabolic movement. And this is true of basically any deadlift. Sumo, conventional, deficit, rack pull, they're all going to have this issue. One thing you could maybe do is some kind of Olympic lifting pull, like a high pull or a clean pull or a Chinese pull. Those could be good. However, again, there's no real eccentric. You can get a little bit of a stretch on the traps and the grip as you lower the bar, but still it's not going to be nearly as much as squatting, and it's not going to be on the glutes, it's not going to be on the quads. There's a reason why almost every Olympic weightlifter squats, because it is simply much better for putting on mass than Olympic lifting. The only other exercise that I think could compare to this would be, there's two of them. One would be the Romanian deadlift. Because there is an eccentric component, you're lowering the bar, as you can see here, and you're getting a stretch on the hamstrings, this could be a candidate for some people. However, there are a few problems with this. One is that the hamstrings are a relatively small muscle group compared to the glutes and the quads, as well as even the adductors. Second, it's going to take longer to recover from. Anyone who's done RDLs for any kind of decent volume, they know that this takes almost a week to recover from. It's going to be at least 5 days that your hamstrings are sort of out of commission. So you can't do it as frequently as heavy and hard squatting, making it an inferior choice for the most anabolic exercise. Another candidate would be the bent over row. This is going to use the hamstrings, the glutes, the erectors to keep your posture, and then it's going to work the biceps, the grip, the lats, the traps to actually move the bar. Now, I think this is a good choice. However, it's not going to use the quads at all, and it's not really going to put a stretch on the lower body at all. So this is a good movement. It can help your back, it can help your deadlift. I think it's challenging and a great option, but for most anabolic exercise, not really going to cut it. Another option might be walking lunges. This is going to work the glutes. It's going to get a big stretch on the glutes, good stretch on the quads, the adductors, even the hamstrings, a little bit of calf stimulation even. It's going to work the traps. It's going to work the rear delts when you're holding the dumbbells, your grip, even your lats a little bit. If the dumbbells are swinging forward, you have to keep your lats tight to avoid rounding over. And so this is actually going to be a good option. It also puts less stress on the lower back and on the spine. So if you have lower back issues, I would say a lunge with dumbbells is going to be a better option. You get most of the same benefits, but it's just going to be less stressful on the lower back. You could also do front squats or the low bar back squat. Those are also going to be good candidates. I personally prefer high bar. You get a better stretch on the quads, maybe a better stretch on the glutes. It's easier to hit depth. I could totally understand why low bar is an option, just because you can move more weight for most people. However, it does tend to beat up the wrists, the elbows, the shoulders, and if you look at most Olympic weightlifters, they all do high bar. If you look at most powerlifters, they do high bar as an accessory exercise, and they don't even do low bar most of the time. So keep in mind, this is just personal preference. If you prefer low bar, do low bar. Everyone's leverages are a little bit different. Everyone learned how to squat a little bit differently. I'm not saying you have to do high bar. This is just my opinion, my perspective, and the exercises that I do that seem to promote the most whole body growth. You could also do front squats. Those are another good full body squat type movement. But for most people, the upper back and the posture, the core, the spinal erectors are going to be the limiting factor, and it won't stress the quads and the glutes as much as a high bar position. So I would advocate high bar over front squats for most people. Furthermore, you could think of sprinting as a very full body exercise that does place a lot of tension throughout the body. However, for me personally, sprinting tends to reduce my appetite. So if I do hill sprints, sprints on the track, sprints on the road, any kind of sprinting or intervals, I tend to notice that it kills my appetite. So if I squat, I'll be super hungry. But if I do intervals, it will actually reduce my hunger pretty noticeably. And this is true of most high intensity interval training. You will actually, I almost just died there. Don't do that, pro tip. But if you do intervals, most people will find that it actually reduces your hunger, which is going to have the opposite effect. It can be great for losing fat, but for gaining muscle and gaining size and gaining mass, I would say intervals are definitely not going to be the best choice. At the end of the day, it's your training. So I can give you suggestions, I can tell you my opinion, I can give you some logical reasons why to choose some exercises, but it's up to you. If you're training yourself, if you're coaching yourself, it is up to you to select the exercises that you want to do. All right, that is all for today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time. Peace.